The morning of November 12, 2016 was crisp and gray in the small town of Willow Creek, Vermont, where frost clung to the fields and the air smelled of wood smoke. Daniel Harper, a 42-year-old mail carrier, kissed his wife, Maggie, goodbye at their modest farmhouse, his thermos of coffee steaming in his hand. Back by 4, he promised, adjusting his USPS cap. Maggie smiled, her hazel eyes crinkling, and waved from the porch as his blue postal van rumbled down the gravel drive. It was a routine they'd perfected over 15 years of marriage, a quiet rhythm that anchored their life in this sleepy town of 2,000 souls. Daniel's rural route, number 17, wound through 40 miles of farmland, dense woods, and scattered homes, some so isolated they seemed forgotten by time. He loved the solitude, the way the rolling hills stretched under endless skies, the occasional deer darting across the road. He knew every mailbox, every dog, every pothole. He'd wave to farmers like Old Man Kessler or drop off packages for the reclusive widow, Mrs. Tate, who'd leave him homemade cookies on her porch. To Willow Creek, Daniel was more than a mailman. He was a lifeline, a familiar face in a world that felt increasingly disconnected. That day, though, Daniel didn't come home. By 5 p.m., Maggie was pacing, her calls to his cell going straight to voicemail. By 6, she phoned the post office where the supervisor, Janet Cole, confirmed Daniel hadn't checked in after his route. By 8, the Willow Creek Sheriff's Department was involved, and a search party of volunteers combed the back roads under a cold, starless sky. His van was found parked off County Road 9. Near a dense stretch of pine forest, keys in the ignition, radio still playing soft country tunes. The mail for the last 5 stops was undelivered, stacked neatly in the back. His thermos sat on the passenger seat, half full. But Daniel was gone. The search stretched into weeks. Helicopters buzzed over the forest, dogs sniffed through underbrush, and divers scoured the nearby Willow River. Theories swirled. Had Daniel wandered off disoriented? Had he been attacked by a bear, though no tracks were found? Some whispered he'd run off, maybe overwhelmed by debts or a midlife crisis, but Maggie dismissed it. He'd never leave me, she told Sheriff Tom Brody, her voice fierce. Not without a word. The case grew cold, the town's hope fading with the winter snow. Maggie kept Daniel's work boots by the door as if he might walk in any day. 7 years later, on a damp October morning in 2023, a local teenager, Ethan Walsh, was exploring an abandoned barn off Route 12 for a school photography project. The barn, sagging and overtaken by ivy, had belonged to the late Mr. Kessler, whose farm had been sold after his death in 2019. Ethan, 17, pushed through the creaking doors, his camera clicking at rusted tools and cobwebbed rafters. In a corner, under a pile of moldy hay, he spotted a flash of blue, a USPS mailbag, weathered but intact, its strap frayed. His heart raced as he opened it, finding undelivered letters postmarked November 2016, addressed to homes on Route 17. Tucked inside was a small notebook, its pages yellowed but legible with Daniel's neat handwriting. If you find this, tell Maggie I'm sorry. I saw something I shouldn't have. Ethan's mother, a volunteer firefighter, called the sheriff's office. Within hours, the barn was cordoned off, and Maggie was at the station clutching the mailbag like a lifeline. Sheriff Brody, now grayer and wearier, spread the contents on a table, 23 letters, a few catalogs, and Daniel's notebook. Maggie's hands shook as she read the first entry, dated November 11, 2016, "Something's off at Kessler's place. Saw a truck I didn't recognize last night, no plates, unloading crates in the dark. Kessler was arguing with a man in a suit. I should have left, but I stayed too long." The final entry, scrawled hastily on November 12th, read, "They saw me. I'm not imagining it. If I don't make it home, Maggie, check Kessler's barn. I love you." The discovery cracked the case wide open. Brody called in the state police, and Maggie, fueled by grief and fury, demanded answers. Who had Daniel seen? What was in those crates? And why had his mailbag ended up hidden in a barn 7 years after he vanished? The notebook hinted at a secret Daniel had stumbled upon, one that cost him everything. As Maggie sat in her kitchen that night, the distant hills cloaked in mist, she felt a chill. Whoever had silenced Daniel was still out there, and now they knew the truth was no longer buried. Maggie couldn't sleep that night, the notebook's words burning in her mind. She sat at the kitchen table, Daniel's mailbag beside her, its faded blue canvas a relic of the life they'd lost. The house was too quiet without his laughter, his off-key humming as he sorted mail on the counter. She flipped through the notebook again, tracing his familiar script. The entries were sparse, written in the shorthand of a man who trusted his memory. October 28th, Kessler's gate left open, unusual. November 5th, same truck, 2 a.m., no lights. November 10th, heard shouting from barn, sounded like threats. Each note tightened the knot in her stomach. Daniel had seen something at Kessler's farm, something dangerous enough to make him hide a message for her. By morning, the sheriff's office was buzzing. Sheriff Brody called Maggie to meet with Detective Lisa Hargrove from the Vermont State Police, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who'd worked cold cases across New England. The station's conference room smelled of stale coffee and damp wool as Hargrove spread out a map of Route 17, Daniel's route marked in red. "We're treating this as a homicide now," Hargrove said, her voice steady but kind. The notebook suggests Daniel witnessed illegal activity, likely at Kessler's property. "We need to know what he saw and who was involved." Maggie nodded, her throat tight. "He was careful. If he wrote it down, it was serious." Hargrove tapped the map, circling Kessler's farm. "The barn's been searched before during the initial investigation, but it was Kessler's property then. He claimed he hadn't seen Daniel, and we had no reason to dig deeper. Now with the mailbag, we're going back." Brody added, "Kessler died in 19, heart attack. His son sold the farm to a developer, but the barn's been untouched. Whoever hid that bag didn't expect it to be found." The state police searched the barn that afternoon, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The hay was cleared, revealing a trapdoor beneath, rusted but intact. It led to a small cellar, empty except for a few splintered crates and a faint chemical smell that made the officers cough. Forensic techs took samples, their faces grim. "Could be residue from something illegal," one muttered. Maggie, waiting outside the cordon, overheard and felt her heart lurch. Drugs? Weapons? Whatever it was, Daniel had stumbled into it. Hargrove interviewed Ethan Walsh, the teenager who'd found the bag. He was nervous, fidgeting with his camera strap. "I didn't touch much, just the bag," he said. "But I saw scratches on the trapdoor, like someone pried it open in a hurry." Hargrove pressed him about the barn's history. Ethan shrugged. "Kids used to say it was haunted, but no one came near it after Kessler died. Too creepy." His mother, standing nearby, added, "Kessler was odd, kept to himself. Never saw him with visitors, but there were always trucks coming and going at night." Maggie drove home, the notebook in her purse, her mind racing. Kessler's farm was 2 miles from where Daniel's van was found. Had he stopped there on his route, seen something he shouldn't have? She remembered Daniel mentioning Kessler in passing, a gruff old farmer who rarely spoke but always had his mail waiting by the gate. "Strange guy," Daniel had said once, but harmless. Now she wasn't sure. She pulled out the notebook again, rereading the final entry. "They saw me." Who were they? The next day, Hargrove called with news. The chemical traces in the cellar tested positive for methamphetamine precursors, ingredients for meth production. Kessler's farm might have been a stash point, Hargrove explained. Small scale, probably distributing to nearby counties. Daniel could have seen a drop-off or pickup. Maggie's stomach churned. "You think he walked into a drug operation?" Hargrove hesitated. "It's likely. The question is who else was involved. Kessler wasn't working alone." Maggie thought of the man in the suit Daniel mentioned. Willow Creek was a farming town, not a place for suits. She asked, could it be someone local? Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "We're looking into Kessler's contacts, but the suit suggests someone with money or influence, not a typical dealer." Brody, listening, shifted uncomfortably. Maggie, we're also checking Daniel's delivery logs. If he made a stop at Kessler's that day, it might tell us what he saw. That evening, Maggie visited the post office where Janet Cole, now retired, met her in the parking lot. Janet hugged her tightly. "I can't believe they found his bag," she said, tears in her eyes. Maggie asked about Daniel's last day. Janet frowned, thinking. He was normal, joking about the cold snap. But he did mention Kessler's mailbox was full, said he'd have to drop off a notice. "I didn't think much of it." Maggie's pulse quickened. A full mailbox meant Daniel had a reason to approach the farm, maybe even the barn. Back home, Maggie spread out a map of Route 17, marking Kessler's farm and the spot where Daniel's van was found. The 2-mile stretch was mostly woods, with a few homes and a gas station owned by Ray Tillman, a local businessman who'd served on the town council. Ray had been part of the search party in 2016, always quick to offer coffee or his truck. Maggie remembered his polished demeanor, the way he wore suits even in a town of flannel and denim. A man in a suit. The thought lodged in her mind, sharp and unsettling. She called Hargrove, her voice trembling. "Have you looked into Ray Tillman? He owns the gas station near Kessler's place. Always wears suits, has money, influence." Hargrove was silent for a moment. Tillman's name came up in Kessler's old phone records, but we didn't have context then. "I'll dig deeper." "Stay put, Maggie. Don't talk to anyone about this." But Maggie couldn't sit still. She drove to the library, pulling old newspapers from 2016. A front-page story caught her eye. Tillman donates $50,000 to Sheriff's Department for new equipment. The photo showed Ray, smiling in a tailored suit, shaking Brody's hand. Maggie's hands shook as she photocopied the article. Ray had been a pillar of Willow Creek, funding community events, sponsoring Little League. But his gas station was a mile from Kessler's farm, and he'd have known Daniel's route. Had Daniel seen Ray that day, maybe unloading crates with Kessler? She thought of the notebook's warning. "I saw something I shouldn't have." The pieces were falling together, but the picture was still blurry. The next morning, Hargrove and Brody arrived at Maggie's house, their faces grim. "We got a warrant for Tillman's financials," Hargrove said. "There's a pattern, large cash deposits in 2016, right around Daniel's disappearance. Offshore accounts, too. He's not just a small-town businessman." Brody looked away, his jaw tight. "Maggie, Ray was my friend. I never suspected." Maggie cut him off. "Did Daniel see Ray with Kessler? Is that why he's gone?" Hargrove nodded. "We think so. The meth operation was likely a side hustle for Tillman, using Kessler's farm as a front. Daniel's route took him past the farm daily. If he saw a deal go down, he became a liability." Maggie's eyes burned with tears. "So they killed him?" Hargrove's voice softened. "We don't know yet, but we're bringing Ray in for questioning today. We need your help, Maggie. If Daniel left any other notes, anything at all, it could tie this together." Maggie handed over the photocopied article, her voice steady despite her fear. "This is what I found. Ray had the money, the connections. He was hiding something." Hargrove tucked the article into her folder. "Good work. Stay here, lock your doors. We'll call you after we talk to Tillman." As they left, Maggie felt a chill, like someone was watching. She double-checked the locks, her heart pounding. Daniel had died for what he saw, and now she was chasing the same truth. She wouldn't stop, not until Ray answered for it. Maggie spent the afternoon in a haze, her eyes darting to the windows every time a car passed. The farmhouse, once a haven, felt exposed, its creaking floors amplifying her unease. She clutched Daniel's notebook, rereading his words for clues she might have missed. A faint pencil mark caught her eye, hidden in the margin of an earlier entry. Blue sedan, no plates, gas station, NOV8. Her breath caught. Ray Tillman's gas station was the only one on Route 17, and she'd seen a blue sedan in his lot more than once, sleek and out of place among the town's dusty pickups. Had Daniel noticed it too, linked it to the truck at Kessler's farm? She wanted to call Hargrove but hesitated. The detective had told her to stay put, and Maggie didn't want to seem paranoid. Instead, she dug through a box of Daniel's old belongings in the attic, hoping for anything, a receipt, a post-it that might connect the dots. Under a stack of faded USPS manuals, she found a small envelope, unsealed, with a single photo inside. Daniel's postal van parked near Kessler's gate. A blue sedan in the background, its driver blurred but wearing a suit. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, NOV 10th, 6 p.m. Tell Brody if I don't make it. Maggie's hands shook. This was proof, a snapshot of the moment Daniel knew he was in danger. She dialed Hargrove, her voice urgent. I found a photo in Daniel's things. It shows a blue sedan at Kessler's farm, taken 2 days before he vanished. It's got to be Ray's. Hargrove's tone sharpened. Don't touch it. Bag it in plastic and bring it to the station now. We're questioning Tillman, but he's slippery, claims he barely knew Kessler. This could change everything. Maggie grabbed a Ziploc bag, sealed the photo, and headed for her car, the notebook tucked in her purse. The sky was heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. The sheriff's station was 10 miles away, and the winding roads felt endless. Maggie's eyes flicked to her rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of a dark vehicle trailing her, too far to identify. Her pulse raced. She pressed the gas, the old sedan rattling as she rounded a curve. The vehicle fell back, but her nerves didn't settle. By the time she reached the station, her hands were clammy. Hargrove met her at the door, taking the bagged photo with gloved hands. Good work, Maggie. This matches a car Tillman owned in 2016, sold a month after Daniel disappeared. We're pulling records now. Inside, the station buzzed with tension. Brody stood by a coffee machine, his face drawn. Maggie handed Hargrove the notebook, pointing out the margin note about the sedan. He was watching them, she said. He knew it wasn't just Kessler. Hargrove nodded, her eyes scanning the page. Tillman's story is unraveling. He admits to meeting Kessler occasionally but swears it was about farm equipment. His financials tell a different story. Cash flow spiked in late 2016, then dropped when the farm sold. We think he moved the operation after Daniel's disappearance. Maggie sat in a hard plastic chair, her mind spinning. What about the barn? Did you find anything else? Hargrove hesitated. The cellar had traces of blood, too degraded for a quick DNA match, but were rushing tests. If it's Daniel's, we'll have enough to charge Tillman with more than fraud. Maggie's stomach lurched. Blood. The word made it real. Daniel hadn't just vanished. He'd been hurt, maybe killed, in that damp, forgotten cellar. Hargrove's radio crackled, and a voice reported Tillman's lawyer had arrived, stalling the interrogation. Stay here, Hargrove told Maggie. I'll update you soon. But Maggie couldn't sit still. She stepped outside for air, the cold biting her cheeks. Across the street, a blue sedan idled, its windows tinted. Her heart stopped. It looked like the car in Daniel's photo, though she couldn't be sure. She hurried back inside, her breath shallow, and told Brody. He frowned, grabbing his keys. Stay put. I'll check it out. Minutes dragged like hours. Maggie's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll end up like him. Her blood ran cold. She showed Hargrove, who cursed under her breath. Forward it to me. We'll trace it. The detective's calm professionalism was a lifeline, but Maggie felt the walls closing in. Someone was watching, someone who knew she'd found the photo. Was it Tillman or someone else tied to the operation? Brody returned, his face grim. No car across the street now, but I saw tire tracks. Could have been someone passing through, but I'll have patrols sweep the area. Maggie barely heard him, her mind fixed on the text. She thought of Daniel's final entry. They saw me. Had he been followed too, his every move tracked until they cornered him? She pictured him in the barn, facing Kessler and Tillman, realizing too late there was no way out. Hargrove reappeared, holding a printout. The sedan's VIN from 2016 traces back to a shell company linked to Tillman. He lied about selling it. It's still registered to an associate of his, a guy named Carl Vance. We're picking Vance up now. Maggie's eyes widened. Carl Vance? He worked at Tillman's gas station. Used to fix Daniel's van when it broke down. Hargrove nodded. Small towns, everyone's connected. Vance has a record: assault, theft. If he was muscle for Tillman's operation, he might know what happened to Daniel. The interrogation resumed, and Maggie waited, her nerves frayed. She thought of Carl, a lanky man with a perpetual smirk, always lingering at the gas station's counter. Daniel had trusted him, even tipped him extra for quick repairs. Had Carl betrayed that trust, lured Daniel to the farm? The thought made her sick. She closed her eyes, picturing Daniel's warm smile, his calloused hands holding hers. He'd been her anchor, and now she was fighting for him, piecing together his last moments. Hargrove's phone rang, and she stepped away to answer. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. Vance is in custody. He's talking, trying to cut a deal. Says Tillman ran a meth ring through Kessler's farm. Small but profitable. Daniel saw a drop-off Vance, Tillman, and Kessler unloading crates from that blue sedan. They spotted him watching from the road. Maggie's voice broke. What did they do to him? Hargrove's jaw tightened. Vance claims they only meant to scare Daniel, rough him up to keep him quiet, but things got out of hand. He says Tillman panicked when Daniel threatened to go to the police. They took him to the barn, and Vance isn't clear on what happened next. He's blaming Tillman, says he wasn't there for the end. Maggie's tears fell freely. The blood in the cellar. It's Daniel's, isn't it? We're still waiting on DNA, Hargrove said softly. But Vance gave us a location. Says Daniel's body was moved to a ravine a mile from the farm, hidden under brush. We've got a team heading there now. Maggie nodded, her grief raw and heavy. She wanted to scream, to demand Tillman face her, but all she could do was wait. The station's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a stark reminder of the world moving on while hers shattered. Outside, rain began to fall, pattering against the station's windows. Maggie thought of Daniel's van, abandoned on that lonely road, his thermos still warm when they found it. He'd been so close to home, so close to safety. She clutched the notebook, its pages worn from her touch. Tell Maggie I'm sorry. He'd known he might not make it, yet he'd left her a trail, a way to find the truth. She wouldn't let him down. As the rain intensified, Hargrove's radio crackled again. Teams at the ravine, a voice reported. We found something. Maggie's heart stopped, hope and dread colliding. She looked at Hargrove, who nodded grimly. They're bringing it in. We'll know soon, Maggie. The wait was agony, each minute stretching into eternity. Maggie held the notebook to her chest, whispering, I'm here, Daniel. I'm here. The rain hammered the sheriff's station roof, a relentless drumbeat that matched Maggie's racing pulse. She sat rigid in the waiting area, Daniel's notebook clutched like a talisman. The air was thick with the scent of wet coats and burnt coffee. The station a hive of activity as officers moved in and out, their radios crackling with updates from the ravine. Hargrove had disappeared to coordinate with the search team, leaving Maggie with Brody, who fidgeted with a pen, avoiding her eyes. "They'll find him," he muttered, more to himself than her. Maggie didn't respond. She couldn't shake the image of Daniel in that barn, facing Tillman and Vance, his trust in Willow Creek's small-town decency shattered. Her phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number. "You're making a mistake." Maggie's breath hitched. She showed Brody, who cursed and grabbed his radio. "Hargrove, we've got another threat to Maggie's phone. Trace it now." He turned to her, his face lined with guilt. "I should have seen it, Maggie. Ray was always too smooth, too generous. I thought he was just a good guy." Maggie shook her head. "We all did." Daniel was the only one who saw through him. Hargrove returned, her boots slick with mud. "The phone's a burner, but we're narrowing the signal to a tower near Tillman's gas station. Someone's getting sloppy." She hesitated, then met Maggie's gaze. "The team found remains in the ravine, human, male. They're degraded, but there's a USPS jacket, same size Daniel wore. We're rushing DNA, should have results by morning." Maggie's vision blurred, tears spilling over. A jacket. Daniel's jacket. It was real now, undeniable. She nodded, unable to speak, her fingers digging into the notebook. Hargrove sat beside her, voice low. "Vance is spilling more. Says Tillman ordered the cleanup after Daniel after it happened. They dumped him in the ravine, hid the mailbag in the barn cellar, thinking no one would look there. Kessler was supposed to burn it, but he died before he could." Maggie's voice was barely a whisper. "Why didn't they just burn it right away?" Hargrove sighed. "Panic, maybe? Or Kessler got cold feet. He wasn't a hardened criminal, just a farmer in over his head." Maggie thought of Kessler, his weathered face and curt nods when Daniel delivered his mail. Had he felt guilt knowing Daniel's fate? She pictured the barn, its trapdoor hiding secrets for 7 years until Ethan's curiosity cracked it open. "What about Tillman?" she asked. "Is he talking?" Hargrove's jaw tightened. "He's sticking to his story, claims he only knew Kessler casually, denies the meth ring. But Vance's testimony and the sedan link him. We're searching his properties now, gas station, house, even his cabin by the lake." The mention of the cabin sparked a memory. Daniel had once delivered a package there, a rare stop on his route. Big place, he'd told Maggie, too fancy for a gas station owner. She'd laughed it off then, but now it felt ominous. "Check the cabin thoroughly," she told Hargrove. Daniel said it was secluded, perfect for hiding things. Hargrove nodded, making a note. "We're on it. Tillman's lawyer's fighting us, but we've got enough for a warrant." As Hargrove left to brief her team, Maggie flipped through the notebook again, desperate for anything she'd overlooked. A loose page slipped out, folded tightly, one she hadn't noticed before. She unfolded it with trembling hands, a hand-drawn map, crude but clear, showing Kessler's farm, the gas station, and a dotted line to a spot labeled Lake Cabin Dash. Below it, Daniel had written, "If they move it, check here." NOV-11, Maggie's heart pounded. Daniel had suspected Tillman's cabin, had mapped it out the day before he vanished. She waved Brody over, showing him the page. This was in the notebook. Daniel knew Tillman was involved. Brody's eyes widened. "Jesus, Maggie? This could be where they took the crates." He radioed Hargrove, who was already en route to Tillman's gas station. "Lisa, Maggie found a map in Daniel's notebook, points to Tillman's lake cabin. Looks like he thought they were storing something there." Hargrove's voice crackled back, "Copy that. We're splitting the team, half to the cabin, half to the station. Keep Maggie safe, Tom?" Brody nodded, his hand resting on his holster. "You're not leaving my sight, Maggie?" The wait was excruciating. Maggie paced, the notebook now a lifeline to Daniel's final days. She imagined him sketching that map, his steady hands betraying none of the fear he must have felt. He'd been methodical even in danger, leaving breadcrumbs for her to follow. She thought of their last morning together, his warm kiss, his promise to be home by 4. Had he known it was goodbye? The thought broke her, but it also fueled her. Tillman and Vance would pay. She'd make sure of it. Hargrove's team hit the gas station first, finding a few suspicious receipts, but no drugs. The cabin was next, a sprawling log home tucked in the woods by Lake Willow. The search team reported back at dusk. The cabin's basement had a locked safe, pried open to reveal ledgers detailing meth transactions, dates matching 2016. Tucked among them was a single USPS delivery slip signed by Daniel dated November 10th. Maggie's throat closed when Hargrove showed her a photo of it. He was there, she whispered. He delivered something to Tillman, saw too much. The evidence piled up, but Tillman held firm, his lawyer spinning denials. Vance, however, cracked wider under pressure. In a second interrogation, he admitted luring Daniel to the barn under Tillman's orders. Ray said we just needed to talk, make him see reason, Vance stammered, according to Hargrove's update. Daniel wouldn't back down, kept saying he'd go to the feds. Ray lost it, hit him with a wrench. It was over fast. Maggie sobbed as Hargrove relayed the words, the image of Daniel's final moments searing her mind. The rain eased to a drizzle as night fell, the station quieter now. Maggie sat with Brody, who'd barely spoken since the cabin search. I trusted Ray, he said finally, his voice raw. He was at every search party, brought us coffee, acted like he cared. Maggie touched his arm. He fooled us all, Tom. Except Daniel. Brody nodded, wiping his eyes. Your husband was a good man. Braver than most. Hargrove burst in, her face flushed. We got a hit. The DNA from the ravine, it's Daniel's. The jacket, the remains, it's him. Maggie's legs buckled and Brody caught her, guiding her to a chair. She'd known it was coming, but the confirmation was a knife to the heart. Daniel was gone, truly gone. Yet amidst the grief, a spark of resolve burned. What about Tillman? She asked, her voice shaking but firm. Hargrove's eyes gleamed. Vance's confession and the cabin ledgers are enough. We're charging him with murder, conspiracy, and drug trafficking. He's done. Maggie nodded, tears streaming down her face. She thought of Daniel's notebook, his careful notes, his love for her woven into every word. He died to protect the truth, to stop Tillman's poison from spreading through their town. She'd carry that fight now for him. Hargrove placed a hand on her shoulder. We're recovering Daniel's remains tomorrow. You'll be able to bury him, Maggie. Give him the farewell he deserves. Outside, the rain had stopped, the clouds parting to reveal a sliver of moon. Maggie stepped into the cool night, the notebook still in her hands. She looked toward the hills where Daniel had driven his route, where he'd faced his end with courage. I found you, she whispered. I'll make it right. The station's lights glowed behind her, a beacon in the dark, as she steeled herself for what came next, justice, closure, and a life rebuilt from the ashes of loss. Maggie woke to a gray dawn, the weight of the previous night's revelations pressing on her chest. She hadn't slept, not really. Her dreams were fragments of Daniel's voice, his laughter, his final scribbled words in the notebook she still held. The farmhouse was cold, the silence louder than ever. She made coffee, the routine a faint echo of the mornings when Daniel would sit across from her, planning his route. Today, she'd face the reality of his remains being recovered, a step toward closure but also a fresh wound. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail from Hargrove. Maggie, we're heading to the ravine at 8 a.m. You don't have to come, but if you want to be there, we'll make space. Tillman's in lockup and Vance is giving us more. Call me. She dressed mechanically, pulling on Daniel's old flannel shirt for comfort, its faded plaid soft against her skin. The drive to the ravine was a blur, the hills cloaked in mist, the air heavy with the scent of wet pine. The site was a mile off Route 17, a steep gully hidden by dense brush, accessible only by a narrow dirt path. Police vehicles lined the road, their lights muted in the fog. Hargrove greeted her with a nod, her face etched with fatigue. It's rough terrain, she warned. You can stay up here if it's too much. Maggie shook her head. I need to see it. For him. The recovery team worked methodically, their voices low as they navigated the rocky slope. Maggie stood at the edge, clutching the notebook, her eyes fixed on the spot where Daniel had lain for 7 years. A tech in a white suit held up a fragment of blue fabric, part of the USPS jacket, before bagging it. Another uncovered a cracked wristwatch, its face stopped at 3:47. Maggie's breath caught. It was Daniel's, a gift she'd given him for their 10th anniversary, engraved with "Always M." She turned away, tears burning, as Hargrove guided her back to the road. "We'll take care of him," the detective promised. "He's coming home." Back at the station, Hargrove shared the latest. Vance had confessed to helping Tillman move Daniel's body after the killing. "It was Ray's call," Vance had said, his voice shaking in the recorded interview Maggie wasn't supposed to hear but did. "Daniel saw us unloading at the barn, meth, cash, the works. He was gonna blow it all up. Ray said we had no choice." Vance claimed Tillman struck the fatal blow, a wrench to the head in the barn cellar, then ordered Vance and Kessler to dump the body. The mailbag was hidden to buy time, a sloppy afterthought in their panic. Tillman, meanwhile, was crumbling. Faced with Vance's testimony, the cabin ledgers, and Daniel's photo of the sedan, he'd started talking, though his version was laced with deflections. "It was an accident," he told Hargrove, his polished charm gone. "Daniel got nosy, wouldn't let it go. I just wanted to scare him." Hargrove didn't buy it, and neither did Maggie. The ledgers showed Tillman had pocketed over $2 million from the meth ring, funneled through shell companies. Daniel's death wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move to protect a fortune. Maggie sat in on the briefing, her presence a quiet demand for truth. Hargrove laid out the case. Tillman would face first-degree murder, drug trafficking, and conspiracy charges. Vance, cooperating, might get a reduced sentence but would still serve decades. The blood in the barn cellar matched Daniel's DNA, sealing the physical evidence. The only loose end was Kessler's role. Dead men couldn't talk, but his farm had been the operation's heart. "We're digging into his estate," Hargrove said. "Might find more on who else knew." The question of who sent the threatening texts lingered. The burner phone's signal traced to Tillman's gas station, but he denied owning it. Hargrove suspected a third player, someone low-level who'd stayed under the radar. "Could be a runner or a lookout," she told Maggie. "We're monitoring Tillman's known associates." Maggie nodded, but the texts haunted her. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." Someone was still out there, watching, waiting. She thought of the blue sedan in Daniel's photo, its blurred driver a ghost she couldn't name. That afternoon, Maggie visited the post office, needing to feel closer to Daniel. Janet Cole was there, sorting through old records for the investigation. She hugged Maggie, her eyes red. "They found his watch," Maggie said, her voice breaking. Janet nodded, pulling a small box from a drawer. "This was Daniel's, from his locker. I kept it after, well, you know." Inside was a keychain, a tiny silver mail truck Daniel had loved, and a folded note. "Maggie, if I ever miss a route, check the cabin. Love, D." Maggie's heart stopped. Another clue hidden all this time. She called Hargrove, who met her at the station. The note was brief but damning. Proof Daniel had suspected Tillman's cabin before his death. "He was building a case," Hargrove said, studying the keychain. "Not just watching, he was documenting." Maggie felt a surge of pride through her grief. Daniel hadn't been reckless. He'd been methodical, brave, risking everything to expose Tillman's corruption. She imagined him slipping the note into his locker, a final safeguard, trusting someone would find it. The investigation widened. Hargrove's team raided Tillman's lake cabin again, this time finding a hidden compartment under the basement floor. Inside were more ledgers, a burner phone, and a blood-stained wrench, its handle wiped but flecked with traces of Daniel's DNA. The phone's call log showed texts to the number that had threatened Maggie, sent the day she'd found the notebook. "It's not Tillman's," Hargrove said, "but it's close. We're running prints." Maggie's skin prickled. The third player was real, and they were desperate to stay hidden. That night, Maggie stayed with her sister, Ellen, in town, too unnerved to face the farmhouse alone. Ellen poured tea, her face creased with worry. "You're stirring up a hornet's nest," she said. "What if they come for you?" Maggie sipped the tea, her hands steady despite the fear. Daniel didn't back down. "I won't either." She thought of the keychain, the watch, the notebook, pieces of Daniel's courage guiding her forward. She'd lost him, but she'd found his truth, and it was worth everything. The next morning, Hargrove called with a breakthrough. The burner phone's prints matched a man named Joey Platt, a mechanic at Tillman's gas station with a rap sheet for petty theft. Platt had been a shadow in Willow Creek, quiet but always around, fixing tires or loitering at the counter. "He's in custody," Hargrove said. "Says Tillman paid him to watch the barn after Kessler died, make sure no one snooped. When Ethan found the mailbag, Platt panicked, sent those texts to scare you off." Maggie exhaled, relief mingling with rage. "Did he know about Daniel?" "Platt claims he wasn't there when it happened," Hargrove said. "But he helped move crates, knew the operation. He's facing accessory charges." Maggie closed her eyes, picturing Platt's weaselly face, his hands on Daniel's mailbag, hiding it in the dark. The net was tightening, but it wasn't enough. She wanted Tillman to confess, to look her in the eye and admit what he'd done. Hargrove seemed to read her mind. "Tillman's lawyer's pushing for a plea, but with Platt and Vance talking, he's got no leverage. We'll get him, Maggie." The recovery team finished at the ravine, bringing Daniel's remains to the coroner's office. Maggie didn't see them, she couldn't bear it, but Hargrove described what they'd found: the jacket, the watch, a few bones, enough to confirm it was him. The coroner ruled the cause of death as blunt force trauma, consistent with Vance's story of the wrench. Maggie planned a memorial, simple but heartfelt, at the church where they'd married. She wanted Daniel remembered as the man he was: kind, steady, a hero who'd died to protect his town. As she left Ellen's to prepare, a patrol car idled outside, Brody's orders to keep her safe. Maggie felt the weight of eyes on her, the town's whispers now a mix of sympathy and unease. Tillman's fall had exposed Willow Creek's underbelly, a stain on its idyllic facade. She drove past the gas station, its windows dark, A closed, sign taped to the door. The blue sedan was gone, impounded as evidence. Maggie gripped the wheel, Daniel's keychain dangling from her ignition, a reminder of why she'd kept going. Maggie stood in the churchyard, the October wind tugging at her scarf as she watched mourners gather for Daniel's memorial. The small wooden cross she'd chosen for his grave glinted in the pale sunlight, surrounded by wildflowers from their garden. The coroner had released what remained of Daniel: a few bones, his jacket, his watch, enough for a proper burial. Maggie had spent the week planning, her grief tempered by a fierce need to honor him. The notebook, photo, and keychain note lay on her kitchen table, no longer just clues but relics of his courage. Today she'd say goodbye, but first she needed answers. Inside the church, the pews filled with familiar faces: Janet Cole, Ethan Walsh and his mother, neighbors who'd searched for Daniel 7 years ago. Sheriff Brody stood at the back, his hat in his hands, his eyes red. The air smelled of polished wood and lilies, and Maggie's heart ached as she took her place at the front. The pastor spoke of Daniel's kindness, his quiet strength, but Maggie barely heard. Her mind was on Ray Tillman, locked in a cell 10 miles away. His trial set to begin next month. Hargrove had promised her a chance to face him, and she clung to that. After the service, Hargrove met Maggie outside. her face tense but triumphant. Tillman's plea deal fell through, she said. Vance and Platt gave us everything. Dates, names, even a buyer in Burlington who's now in custody. Ray's facing life without parole. Maggie nodded, her throat tight. Did he admit it? To killing Daniel? Hargrove's eyes softened. Not outright, but he slipped up in interrogation. Said, I never meant for Daniel to get hurt. Before his lawyer shut him down. It's enough, Maggie. With the wrench, the blood, the ledgers, he's finished. Maggie exhaled, the weight of 7 years shifting slightly. What about the texts? Was Platt really the one sending them? Hargrove nodded. He confessed. Tillman told him to keep an eye on the barn after Kessler's death. When Ethan found the mailbag, Platt got scared you'd uncover the rest. He used a burner to scare you off, but he's no mastermind, just a lackey following orders. Maggie thought of Platt's smirk, his greasy hands on Daniel's van. He'd been part of the betrayal, small but cruel. Hargrove handed her a sealed envelope. This was in the cabin's safe, missed in the first search. It's addressed to you. Maggie's hands trembled as she opened it, recognizing Daniel's handwriting instantly. The letter was brief, dated November 11th, 2016. Maggie, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. I saw Tillman and Kessler moving drugs at the farm. I'm meeting them tomorrow to confront them, try to get proof. If it goes wrong, go to Brody, tell him everything. I love you forever. D. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. Daniel had known the risk, had written to her in case he didn't come back. She clutched the letter, her resolve hardening. He died a hero, and she'd make sure the world knew. The trial began in November, a media frenzy descending on Willow Creek. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, their cameras flashing as Tillman, pale and hollow-eyed, was led in handcuffs. Maggie sat in the front row, the notebook and letter in her purse, her sister Ellen beside her. Vance and Platt had taken plea deals, testifying against Tillman in exchange for lighter sentences. Vance's voice shook as he described the barn, Tillman's rage, the wrench striking Daniel's head. He just wanted to talk, Vance said, avoiding Maggie's eyes. Said he'd go to the feds if Ray didn't stop. Ray couldn't let that happen. Platt's testimony was colder, more calculated. He admitted hiding the mailbag, moving crates to the cabin after Daniel's death. Ray paid me to keep quiet, he said, shrugging. Didn't know he'd kill him till it was done. Maggie's hands clenched, her nails digging into her palms. Tillman's defense tried to pin it on Vance, claiming he acted alone, but the evidence was overwhelming. The ledgers, the wrench, Daniel's photo, the DNA. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts: murder, trafficking, conspiracy. When the judge asked Tillman if he had anything to say, he stood, his suit wrinkled, his charm gone. I built this town, he said, his voice hoarse. The gas station, the donations, the jobs. Daniel didn't understand the bigger picture. I never wanted him dead. Maggie stared, her heart pounding. It wasn't remorse, just self-pity. She stood, her voice cutting through the courtroom. You took my husband, Ray. You took him from all of us. He was the good in this town, not you. The judge banged his gavel, but Maggie's words hung in the air. A final tribute to Daniel's truth. Tillman got life, no parole. Vance and Platt were sentenced to 20 and 15 years, respectively, their pleas sparing them worse. The meth ring unraveled, with arrests in Burlington and beyond. dismantling a network that had poisoned Vermont's quiet corners. Maggie left the courthouse, the November air sharp against her skin. Reporters swarmed, but she waved them off, needing silence. She drove to the churchyard, where Daniel's grave lay under a fresh layer of leaves. Kneeling, she placed his keychain, the tiny silver mail truck, on the cross. "You did it," she whispered. "You stopped them." Willow Creek changed after the trial. The gas station stayed shuttered, its lot overgrown with weeds. Brody retired, unable to shake the guilt of trusting Tillman. Maggie sold the farmhouse, too full of memories, and moved to a small apartment near Ellen. She kept Daniel's things, his watch, his jacket, his notebook, displayed on a shelf, a quiet shrine. The town honored him with a plaque at the post office. Daniel Harper, 1974 to 2016. A hero who served with courage. Maggie smiled when she saw it, though the ache never left. Months later, Hargrove visited, bringing a final piece of evidence, a recorded call from Tillman's burner phone, recovered from the cabin. It was Tillman, the day before Daniel's death, talking to an unknown contact. Harper's asking questions. "If he doesn't back off, we handle it." The voice on the other end was muffled, but Hargrove was tracing it, determined to catch every thread of the network. "This is bigger than Willow Creek," she told Maggie. Daniel's evidence cracked it open. "You should be proud." Maggie was, but pride couldn't fill the void. She volunteered at the library, started a community watch program, channeling her grief into action. Willow Creek healed slowly, its trust shaken but rebuilding. Maggie walked Route 17 sometimes, tracing Daniel's path, feeling him in the wind, the rustling pines. He'd left her a trail, notebook, photo, letter, and she'd followed it to justice. The pain would always linger, but so would his love, etched in every clue he'd left behind. As spring broke, Maggie stood by the ravine where they'd found him, now marked with a small stone, "Daniel Harper, forever loved." She laid wildflowers, the same ones from their garden, and whispered, "You're home now." The hills stretched before her, green and alive, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt a flicker of peace. Daniel's fight was over, and hers had brought him rest. She turned back to her car, the notebook in her purse, ready to face whatever came next.